Okay, this is going to be an example creating a model that'll be used in FEM calculations in a different software package using Civil3D. We will take some sort of survey input. Also, we'll be combining surfaces in Civil3D as well, then converting the relatively fine mesh created by Civil3D Surfaces into something more well suited or better suited for FEM software. And I'm going to try to do this in less detail than my previous video, just because it takes too long to create the videos and you most likely do not want to know that detail anyway. So I'm just going to run through the quick steps on how to do it. It'll be a short series type of thing if everything goes according to plan. You are welcome to ask questions whenever and wherever you want to, and I'll see if I can get to them. Okay, we're going to start off by assuming that we've got two surfaces. We've got an existing ground, that one. This specific surface was created by using a point cloud. As you can see, a relatively dense point cloud with the actual structure cropped out. This is basically just the existing ground. So that surface was created by exporting the points as a point cloud, and then that surface was created by using that point cloud as the base file. We've got another surface in here, which is the excavation plan that was obtained from the design or as-built drawings. It was basically modified off of literally PDFs that I traced the points, traced the contours, and then basically added an elevation to those lines, and then we created this excavation plan. We also added a boundary line to that, and the boundary line is at the bottom at this stage. Anyway, so there, the red line, you can see, where is that now? That's the boundary line for the excavation plan surface. Okay, so to start off with, we are going to create a new surface. We're going to make this the base combined surface. So we're going to combine those two surfaces that we already had into one. That's done by going into the definitions of that surface, going to edits, right click on that, clicking on paste surface. Then we're going to paste the first surface we want. That would be the existing ground, and then we will be pasting the next surface as well, the excavation one. So basically what that does is it pastes the one surface on top of the other one, so everything within the boundary of the excavation one will replace the data that we had on the extremely fine point surface that we had over there. Let me just quickly turn these off so we only look at one of these surfaces now, and then I'll show you how it looks, the combined one of the two, since you saw the different contours for the individual ones earlier. Now we're only looking at the combined surface. Let's hope this actually displays well. Now you can see there's only one set of contours that's combined, and you can clearly see that we've got some sort of trench there that was used for the foundation of the dam when it was first constructed. So there we've got our combined surface. This combined surface is obviously made up of a very fine tin or triangles, which is way too complex for the for use in FEM models, and it'll create a bunch of irregularities which will cause instabilities in the FEM model. So we must convert this into a more user-friendly model. The way we're going to do that is by creating a bunch of point groups, and then at different grid spacings, and then we'll paste those on top of the surface to get new or refined data that'll be used as an input for creation of the big surface. As you can see here, the mesh we've got is extremely fine, and then less defined in the excavation plan, and then again very, very fine on the downstream side of that dam. I've got the zoom, or the zoom distance, the detail distance thing set on in Civil3D, so as I zoom out the detail becomes less, just to keep my PC running relatively okay. But yes, there you can see it, very well defined. But let's refine the surface for now. Okay, so firstly I'm going to modify my surfaces that I only see the boundaries of them, because it'll make life just easier, especially if we start adding thousands and thousands of points on top of this surface that we want. So we're going to turn that off, only displaying the border. There we've got that. Okay, so we can see the boundary of the excavation plan and then the border of the combined base surface. Okay, so firstly what we're going to do is we're going to create points on that surface, but for the foundation itself we would like a 2 meter spacing grid of points. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this combined surface and we're going to add a boundary to it. This boundary we will call the outer boundary for this case. I'm not really concerned about that at this stage, so we're going to pick it. This will move the boundary in towards that line. So now we've got the boundary set. Now we need to create points on that specific surface. So the way you do that is you go to points, you open the point creation tool. So we've got the point creation tool. We should just open this point creation settings over here, and we want to not prompt for elevations. We want that to happen automatically, and we do not want them to prompt for description as well. Let's make those two automatic. Then if it's this one, no, it's this one. So we want it on a specific grid. So we're going to be prompted now here at the bottom. Select a surface or press enter to select from a list. We've got one surface, so we can select it, then specify a grid base point. We specify a grid base point. We can orientate the grid if we'd like, but we're not going to do that now. So we press OK. Then we want the grid spacing of 2 meters, X and Y, and then specify the upper right location of the grid. That would be over there. Then change the size or rotation. No, we do not want to do that. So now it's going to create a bunch of points, and that would be it. No, go away. So now if you zoom in here, we've got a bunch of points at a specific grid spacing. So that's a decent start for our first one. To help with the usability of all of the points, because we're going to have multiple sets of these, we're going to create a point group. So we create a new point group over there. We can give it a name. This is the foundation 2 meter grid, and we are not going to provide any styles to it so that we don't see it, so it'll disappear after I include. You have to include the points over there with numbers matching. We're going to select from the specific grid. So now we zoom out, and it's going to select and add all of those COGO points to that specific point group. So it's 0.1 to 536. We're going to apply this, and then we say OK. Now the points will be gone, and we can see that we've got a point grid created there. Now as we move further away from the model, we would like the mesh to be less refined, but in this case, since we wanted the foundation to be relatively coarse, 2 meters we consider coarse because the distance, the width of that excavation is, as you can see there, 13 meters. So that's a relatively coarse, but the FEM guys that will be working on this specific model requested that we've got a 2 meter grid spacing over there, and then a 1.5 meter spacing just on the outside of that. So let's add another boundary. I'm going to draw a relatively rough boundary for this, which we will offset to create another outer boundary, and then we will convert the first boundary we used as an outer boundary as an inner boundary, or actually to hide the data. This will help with the point creation. I'll explain that to you now. Let's first offset this. Let's offset this by a distance of, let's say, 10 meters. 10 meters, let's do it like that. That looks okay, but let's remove this line now. We don't need that anymore. And let's keep it a little bit more refined over there. That should be relatively okay. You can obviously add as many points on this boundary as you'd like. And perhaps you've got a specific zone on one of the banks that you would like to be well refined as well. Anyway, in this case we don't. Anyway, for now, let's remove the boundary that we added initially. So now it'll pop back if we rebuild the surface to the outer one that we had initially. And as you can see, it's renumerating points. So now I've got the full one again. But now we would only like to display this inner bit of the surface, so that the points that we create with the points creation tool will only be created between the red and the white line, or the red and white boundaries. So let's quickly start adding these boundaries now. So we're adding the outer again, then we click on that boundary. It's adding it and it's taking forever. Next, now we can add the next one, the inner one. But this will be a hide boundary. Let's call that inner. It really doesn't matter what you call those boundaries, because it doesn't really have an influence, because we are constantly removing and adding them the whole time. It's not like it's a permanent boundary. Now we're going to add another point group. So let's create the point group for now. So let's call this foundation 1.5 meters. No, we do not want to do that. Okay, now let's first keep the point style right there. So then we go back to the point creation tool. This little thingy will pop up. Grid, we select the surface, base point, rotation 1.5 meters, upper corner. Oh no, that was rotation. Back, stop. Okay, let's try that again. Bottom, rotation 1.5 meters, 1.5 meters, upper corner. In that vicinity we will have points. And no, we do not want to change stuff, so now it's going to add points. Oh man, did I not change those things again? Point creation tool. It shouldn't be manual, it should be automatic. It should be always be automatic. Why should I do this? Okay, third time lucky. Click. No. 1.5, upper right corner, click, and no, we do not want to do that. And voila, we've got points, and there you can see we've got a bunch of points right there at the 1.5 meter spacing now, instead of the 2 meters we had initially. So now we go back to the specific point group. We will go to the properties of those, and then we will include the points. Initially with the 2 meter grid we specifically hid those points so that we cannot select them now. So if we select all of this now, it will only include the newly created points and it will not include the old ones. And that's exactly what we want. Otherwise we would have had, well, 2 point groups or the similar points belonging to more than 1 point group, and that's not what we want to do at this stage. I'm going to continue with this process, basically expanding the boundary, adding more points, increasing the grid spacing the whole time to have the model less refined the further we go away from the actual structure. And I'm not going to show that to you, since it's basically just a repetitive process, and that should it should be clear either way. One thing I neglected to mention is that for the next boundary set, you will use this boundary as the hidden boundary, and then obviously offset this polyline by, let's say, another 10 meters. 10 might be a little bit too little. Let's offset it by 15. Let's keep it at 10. I think 10 should be okay. So that's 10 meters. So we offsetted that, so we've got the new external boundary and then the new internal boundary. So we go back to the boundaries. Those two we can remove. Yes, we want to delete those. Then we've got as soon as this one rebuilds, we've got the bigger picture again. Come on, that's it. Okay, now we've got the outer boundary. So boundaries, add boundary, outer boundary, we use this one. That's the outer boundary. Then we add another one, which would be the hide one, and then we choose this one. Then we've got the next bit of surface displayed, technically displayed in there, that we will be using for the point creation. And just to show you how it looks, otherwise you won't believe me, that we are only displaying the data within that boundary, within those two boundaries, instead of displaying all of the data, and that's why the points get created on top of this zone only, and not on the outside of the boundaries. And as you can see, the mesh is extremely dense, definitely way too dense for any normal FEM model, and that's why we're creating these point sets. Yeah, I think that gives you a relatively good idea. Okay, now that I've created my different points, as you can see, I've created 10 meter spacing, 5 meter, 3, 1.5 and 2 meter spacing grid points. I'm just going to zoom in on these so that you can see that the 2 meters, then 1.5, 3, 5 and then 10 for the outermost points at this stage. Now we would like to convert these points into a surface. So let's create another surface here. So we go create surface, and this would be points combined surface. Before I do that, just a note on these points. Sadly, they are not linked to the boundaries the whole time, so if I go ahead and change that boundary, the points won't be modified dynamically. I'll have to go and recreate the points. If somebody can tell me how to automate this process, and perhaps for that region I'd like 3 meters, 5 meters or whatever, let's change it to 4. If I could dynamically do that, that would be awesome. So please leave that comment in the comments below if you can. That would be appreciated. So now we've got a combined surface here. I'm going to turn this base combined surface off. Yes, I'm going to turn this base combined surface off so that we can't see that thing anymore. Then we apply this. Then I'm going to select these boundaries. Okay, no, let's leave the boundaries on there for now. And now my cursor disappeared for some reason. AutoCAD is so much fun every now and then. Anyway, so we've got the points combined surface. We go to definitions. Then we go to point groups. So we're going to add point groups to this surface, and then we can add all of them. You can probably go all points, but I like to do the whole point group thing, because then you can individually remove the point groups. And then let's say for instance we change the 1 meter space, 1.5 meter spacings to 1 meters, then we can basically update that specific point group, or within that specific boundary over there, if we would like to, without modifying or changing the rest of the surface. So we go okay there. Then we've got a new surface. So let's turn off all of these. Let's hope I can. No, I can't. Okay, so let's turn off these points so that we don't see the points anymore, otherwise it's just going to slow the PC down. So I'm going to turn these off. Hopefully I don't waste too much of your time while I'm doing this. So then we can have a proper look at the surface and see what we got. Just to note, this was obviously without any manipulation to the points whatsoever. You can obviously go and remove specific points where 2 points are relatively close to a boundary and you would like to avoid having sharp triangles. but we'll see that now. So we go to the points combined one. We can view the standard style, that's fine with me. We can go to edit the surface style, but let's show the triangles. So then we can get a decent idea of how these triangles actually comes out. Wireframe is okay. So that gives you a relatively good idea of what I was aiming at with the relatively coarse mesh for the foundation, slightly finer, more finer. Ugh, my English sucks. Anyway, so we've got relatively coarse, a fine one, more coarse, and then all the way out to the sides. If you look at this in another view, we still have the contours. It doesn't look as jaggedy as we had with the base combined surface. So this would provide us a decent platform that might be able to be used for the creation of the structure on top of this. We will come back to refining these edges, because we can include specific break lines to make sure that we don't have a situation like this where, let's say for instance, our structure came down onto this break line, that we will have very close nodes close to each other that might cause problem with the FEM analysis, especially when you mesh the solids that we will be extracting from this this file. So we can delete that point, or we can move it slightly, or we can move the boundary. There's multiple things that you can do. Another thing, quick thing on this, you can actually go and edit this surface by selecting the surface, clicking edit, and then you can add line, you can delete lines, you can swap edges, that type of swapping of edges. But that's very fine or detailed refinement that you can go into, what I'm not going to do at this stage. It's just nice to know that it's relatively easy to modify the surface if needed. I'm going to stop this video here. This video basically just at least got you up to speed to how easily it is to create a gridded type of surface, and modifying a little bit of it to get a clean surface that might be ready for FEM, at least even if it's just the end gel you are looking for. And my next video will deal with creating, basically creating sub-assemblies, a corridor, and then creating solids from those, and then linking that solid up, or those solids up, with the surface itself. And then we'll go back to modify this to remove problematic areas, but you can see that in my next video if you're interested. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you very much.